The massive alien ship dropped from the clouds like a dark mountain falling from the sky. People across Seoul stopped walking and looked up. Cars pulled over as drivers stared through their windshields. The ship was bigger than any building in the city. Its black metal surface had strange patterns that seemed to move when you looked at them too long. Jiho stood on the roof of the United Nations building and watched the ship land in the empty field outside the city. He was Korea's top diplomat, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. For 3 days, radio signals from space had been coming to Earth. The messages were clear but frightening. An alien empire wanted to meet with Earth's leaders. The ship touched down without making a sound. The ground shook, but there was no noise. Jiho felt his stomach twist with worry. Around him, other diplomats and military officers whispered to each other. Everyone was scared, but they tried not to show it. A door opened in the side of the alien ship. It was huge, big enough for a train to drive through. Smoke poured out, and then they saw them. The aliens walked like humans, but were much taller. Their skin was dark purple, and they wore armor that looked like it was made from black glass. Behind them came something else. Jiho heard someone gasp. The creature following the aliens was like nothing from Earth. It walked on 4 legs but stood as tall as an elephant. Its body was covered in armor that grew from its skin. Sharp spikes ran down its back, and its eyes glowed red in the darkness. Most frightening of all were its claws. They were longer than swords and looked like they could cut through steel. The lead alien stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice came from a small device on his chest. The words were in perfect English, but the voice sounded cold and empty. I am Ambassador Krelfin of the Vorthek Empire. We come to meet the leaders of this world called Earth. Jiho walked down from the building to meet them. His legs felt weak, but he kept moving. Behind him came General Park and Dr. Kim, Earth's best military and science advisors. They had planned for this moment, but seeing the aliens in person was different from all their preparations. Welcome to Earth, Joe said, trying to keep his voice steady. I am Jiho, representing the United Nations and all the people of Earth. Ambassador. Krelfin looked at Jiho like he was studying an insect. The alien was 3 feet taller than any human, and his purple skin had patterns that seemed to pulse with light. Your species is new to us, Krelfin said. But you are not new to the galaxy. We have watched your world for some time. You make much noise for such a small planet. The creature beside the ambassador made a low growling sound. Up close, Jiho could see that its armor was not just protective. Strange symbols glowed along its sides, and the air around it felt electric. The smell was like burning metal and something else that made Jiho's nose burn. This is my shadow maw, Krelfin said, placing a hand on the creature's head. Every Vorthek warrior has one. They are our partners in conquest. This one has destroyed armies on 7 worlds. General Park stepped forward. We are a peaceful people, he said. We hope our 2 species can be friends. Krelfin laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Peaceful? Your broadcasts reach far into space. We see your wars, your weapons, your anger. You are predators, just like us. But you are weak predators. The ambassador gestured to his shadow maw. Every species we meet must prove their strength. It is the way of the galaxy. The strong rule and the weak serve. Today we will show you what strength truly means. Without warning, Krelfin spoke a word in his alien language. The shadow maw moved like lightning. Its claws sliced through a concrete barrier that the military had set up. The concrete was 3 feet thick, but the creature cut through it like paper. Pieces of stone flew everywhere and everyone jumped back, but the creature was not finished. It turned toward a tank that was parked nearby. The tank's crew was inside, ready for anything, or so they thought. The shadow maw leaped onto the tank and began tearing at the armor with its claws. The sound was terrible, like a giant nail scratching on metal. The tank fired its main gun, but the creature had already jumped away. The shell hit nothing but air. The shadow maw landed behind the tank and grabbed it with claws that were strong, enough to crush cars. It lifted the entire tank off the ground and threw it 50 feet away. The tank hit the ground and rolled over 3 times before stopping. Dr. Kim, was writing notes as fast as she could. "The creature shows incredible strength," she whispered to Jiho, "but look at its eyes. There's something else there." Jiho saw what she meant. The Shadow Maw's red eyes were not just glowing, they seemed to look into his mind. He felt a wave of fear wash over him that was not his own. The creature was doing something to his thoughts, making him feel afraid. Around the field, other humans were backing away. Some soldiers had dropped their weapons. The creature's presence was affecting everyone, making them feel helpless and scared. "This is the power of the Vorthek," Ambassador Krelthin said. "Our Shadow Maws are bred for war. They are stronger than your machines, faster than your vehicles, and their minds can touch yours. They can make you feel fear before the battle even begins." The alien ambassador walked closer to Jiho. "Every species we have met has seen this demonstration. Every species has chosen to serve the Vorthek Empire rather than be destroyed. You will make the same choice." General Park started to speak, but Jiho held up his hand. The diplomat looked at the destroyed concrete, the overturned tank, and the creature that could apparently read minds. He felt the fear that the Shadow Maw was pushing into his thoughts, but he also felt something else: determination. "Your creature is very impressive," Jiho said calmly, "and we understand your message. But before we make any decisions, Earth would like to prepare a proper response." Krelthin tilted his head. "A response? You wish to show us your weapons, your armies? We have seen them in your broadcasts." "They are not impressive, perhaps," Jiho said. "But every species deserves the chance to represent themselves properly. Give us 3 days. Then we will show you what Earth considers its greatest strength." The alien ambassador stared at Jiho for a long moment. Around them, the Shadow Maw continued to growl softly, and the fear it projected made everyone's skin crawl. Finally, Krelthin smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp and too white. 3 days, he agreed. "We will remain here and watch. But know this, human. Every species thinks they have something special to show us. Every species thinks they can surprise the Vorthek Empire. None have succeeded." The ambassador turned and walked back toward his ship, the Shadow Maw following close behind. As they moved away, the feeling of fear began to fade, but it did not disappear completely. Jiho watched them go and felt the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. In 3 days, Earth would have to prove itself to these alien conquerors. The question was, what could humanity possibly show them that would make a difference? He looked at the destroyed concrete and the overturned tank. Whatever Earth's response was going to be, it would have to be something the Vorthak had never seen before. Something that would surprise an empire that had conquered worlds across the galaxy. The fate of humanity now depended on finding that something. The emergency meeting had been going on for 6 hours. In the big conference room in Seoul, leaders from every country on Earth sat around a massive table. On the screens around the room, military experts showed pictures of weapons and battle plans. Everyone was talking at once, and everyone had a different idea. "We should use nuclear weapons," said one general. "Show them our most powerful bombs." "Nuclear weapons will only prove we are violent," argued a diplomat from Germany. "They already think we are dangerous." "What about our space weapons?" asked another military leader. "Our laser systems, our missile defense?" Dr. Kim shook her head. "Did you see what that creature did to our tank? Our weapons won't impress them. They've probably seen much better technology across the galaxy." Jiho sat at the head of the table and listened to everyone argue. 3 days was not much time, and every idea seemed wrong. Military demonstrations would just prove the aliens right about humans being violent. Technology displays would look primitive compared to what the Vorthek probably had. There was a knock on the conference room door. A young assistant entered and walked quickly to Jiho. "Sir," she whispered, "there's someone here who wants to speak with you. She says she has an idea about the alien problem." Jiho sighed. For 2 days, hundreds of people had come to the United Nations building with ideas. Most of them were crazy. "Send her away." "We don't have time for her." "Sir," the assistant interrupted, which was unusual for her. She works with tigers. She says she has a different kind of solution. The room went quiet. Tigers. Jiho looked around at all the frustrated faces of world leaders and military experts. Maybe it was time to hear something completely different. Bring her in, he said. A few minutes later, a young woman entered the conference room. She looked nervous but determined. Her clothes were simple, jeans and a work shirt that had some mud on it. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked very small in the room full of powerful people. I am Nari, she said, bowing slightly. I work at the Korean Tiger Reserve outside the city. General Park frowned. Young lady, we are trying to solve a crisis here. We don't have time for... With respect, sir, Nari interrupted. I think you're all thinking about this wrong. The room fell silent again. A few people looked angry that this young woman was interrupting their important meeting, but Jiho was. Curious, explain, he said. I took a deep breath. I watched the video of the alien demonstration. Their creature is impressive, but it's not natural. It's been made in a laboratory, designed to be frightening and powerful. But it moves like a machine, not like a real predator. Dr. Kim leaned forward. What do you mean? Real predators don't just use force, Nari said. They use intelligence, patience, instincts that have been developed over millions of years. The alien creature is strong, but it's only strong. It doesn't understand what it means to be a true hunter. And you think your tigers do? Asked a diplomat from France, sounding skeptical. Nari nodded. I have one tiger in particular. His name is Beiko. I've raised him since he was a cub. He weighs over 400 pounds and is stronger than any machine. But more than that, he and I work together. We understand each other. The room erupted in voices. People were laughing, others were angry, and some just looked confused. You want to send a zoo animal to fight an alien war monster? General Park asked. Not fight, Nari said firmly. Demonstrate. The aliens showed us their idea of strength, domination, and fear. What if we showed them a different kind of strength? Partnership, trust, the bond between human and animal that has existed for thousands of years. An older man at the back of the room stood up. He was tall and had scars on his hands. My name is Hyunwoo, he said. I used to be in special forces, but now I work with animals. I know Nari and her work. What she's suggesting might actually make sense. How? Asked Jiho. Hyunwoo walked to the front of the room. I've seen the alien creature's behavior. It responds to commands from its master, but there's no real connection there. It's like a very advanced robot. But what Nari and Beiko have is different. It's a true partnership between two intelligent beings. A tiger is not intelligent like a human, protested Dr. Kim. No, Hyunwoo agreed. But tigers are intelligent in ways humans are not. They can track prey across miles. They can move without making any sound. They can sense danger before humans even know it's there. And most importantly, they can choose to trust. Nari stepped forward again. Beiko chose to trust me when he was just a baby. His mother had been killed by poachers and he was dying. Alone in the forest, I found him and brought him home. I could have put him in a cage, but instead, I let him choose whether to stay with me or return to the wild. And he chose to stay. Asked Jiho. Every day, Nari said. He's free to leave. Whenever he wants. The reserve has no fences that could hold him. But he stays because we're family. We hunt together, we rest together, we protect each other. That's not something you can create in a laboratory. The room was quiet now. People were thinking. The idea was crazy, but so was everything else about their situation. The aliens expect us to show them weapons or technology, Hyunwoo continued. They've probably seen every kind of weapon in the galaxy, but I bet they've never seen a true partnership between a human and an apex predator. Most species either dominate animals or fear them. Humans are the only species we know of that can become true partners with other predators. General Park shook his head. This is insane. You want to send a young woman and a tiger to represent all of humanity? Why not? Asked a voice from the back. Everyone turned to see Minho, a scientist who had been quiet during the entire meeting. We've been thinking like the aliens expect us to think. Show strength with violence, show power with weapons. But what if our real strength is something completely different? Dr. Kim was looking at her tablet, reading something quickly. Actually, she said slowly, this might work. I've been studying the aliens' behavior. Their entire culture seems to be built on domination and control. They might not understand cooperation at all. That's exactly my point, Nari said. They showed us their way of thinking. Now we show them ours. Jiho looked around the room. Half the people looked skeptical, but the other half were starting to nod. It was a crazy idea, but crazy might be exactly what they needed. Tell me about this tiger, he said to Nari. Nari's face lit up. Baiko is a Siberian tiger, the largest tiger species in the world. He's 6 years old and weighs 420 pounds. He's never hurt a human, but he's taken down wild boars that outweighed him. He can jump 15 feet straight up and run faster than any horse. But more than that, she continued, he thinks. He solves problems. When we play games together, he figures out puzzles that would challenge a dog, and he protects me. Once, a group of men tried to break into the reserve at night. Baiko appeared out of nowhere and stood between them and me. He didn't attack them, but he made it very clear that they should leave. They did, Yunwoo nodded. I've seen them together. It's not like a circus trainer with an animal. It's like watching two friends who happen to be different species. This could backfire. Terribly, warned General Park. If this tiger gets scared or aggressive around the aliens? Baiko doesn't get scared, Nari said simply. And he only gets aggressive when something threatens me. He's met thousands of people at the reserve. He's calm, confident, and intelligent. Jiho made his decision. Dr. Kim, how long would you need to study this tiger and prepare for the demonstration? 2 days, maybe less, she replied. General Park, can you set up a secure area for the demonstration? The general sighed but nodded. Yes, sir, Jiho turned to Nari. Young lady, I hope you understand what you're volunteering for. The future of our entire planet might depend on you and your tiger. Nari straightened her shoulders and looked directly at him. Bikao and I have been partners for 6 years. We trust each other completely. If Earth needs us, we're ready. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Hyunwoo approached Nari. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Nari looked out the window toward the alien ship in the distance. No, she admitted. I'm terrified. But I know Baiko, and I know what we can do together? Maybe that's exactly what these aliens need to see. The Korean Tiger Reserve was quiet in the early morning light. Nari walked along the familiar paths, breathing in the clean air and listening to the sounds of the forest waking up. In 2 days, she would face the aliens and their terrifying creature. But right now, she just wanted to spend time with Baiko in the place they both called home. She found him by the small lake where he liked to drink water in the mornings. He was massive, even for a Siberian tiger. His orange and black stripes seemed to glow in the sunlight, and his white chest and belly were clean and bright. When he saw her coming, he made a soft chuffing sound that was his way of saying hello. Good morning, beautiful, Nari said, sitting down beside him on the grass. Baiko rubbed his huge head against her shoulder, nearly knocking her over. Even sitting down, his head came up to her chest. Nari ran her hands through his thick fur and thought about how they had met. It was 6 years ago, and she had been working as a veterinarian assistant at the reserve. A call came in about poachers in the mountains. When the rangers found them, it was too late for Baiko's mother, but the tiny cub was still alive, weak and frightened. She remembered holding him for the first time. He was so small he fit in her arms like a house cat. His eyes weren't even open yet. The other workers said he probably wouldn't survive without his mother, but Nari refused to give up on him for weeks. She fed him with a bottle every few hours. She slept next to his cage so he wouldn't be alone. When he got sick, she stayed awake for 3 days straight, giving him medicine and keeping him warm. Slowly, he got stronger as he grew. Everyone expected her to move him to a larger cage, then to the main tiger area with the other adult tigers. but something special had happened between them. Beiko didn't just see her as a caretaker, she was his family. Miss Nari? She turned to see Sunho, a military strategist who had arrived. Early that morning, he was carrying a tablet and looked nervous around Beiko. Don't worry, Nari said. He won't hurt you unless you try to hurt me. Just move slowly and speak softly. Sunho nodded and kept his distance. I've been studying the video of the alien. Demonstration? I wanted to understand what we're up against. What did you find? Their creature is impressive, but it has weaknesses, Sunho said, looking at his tablet. It relies completely on brute force. When it destroyed the concrete barrier, it just attacked straight on. No strategy, no thinking about the best way to approach the problem. Beiko finished drinking and walked over to investigate the stranger. Sunho froze as the massive tiger sniffed around his feet. He's just being polite, Nari explained. Tigers learn about new people by their scent. After a moment, Beiko lost interest in Sunho and wandered over to a fallen log. He examined it carefully, then positioned himself and leaped over it effortlessly, even though the log was taller than Nari. That's what I mean, Sunho said, watching. Your tiger thinks before he acts. He measured the jump, chose his approach, then executed it perfectly. The alien creature just smashed through everything. Beiko is smart, Nari agreed. All tigers are. They have to be to survive in the wild. But this is different, Sunho continued. Wild tigers hunt alone. Beiko hunts with you. That's created. Something new, a predator that combines human intelligence with tiger instincts. As if to prove his point, Beiko suddenly stopped playing and looked toward the forest. His ears were forward and his body was tense. Nari immediately paid attention. What is it, boy? She heard it a moment later, the sound of vehicles coming up the road to the reserve. Beiko had heard them long before her human ears could detect. Anything, Dr. Kim and her team are arriving, Sunho said, checking his watch. They're early. 3 jeeps pulled up to the reserve entrance. Dr. Kim got out of the first one, followed by several scientists with equipment. From the other vehicles came Minho, the xenobiologist who had supported Nari's plan, and a woman Nari didn't recognize. Nari, Dr. Kim called out, I'd like you to meet Yaram. She's our best translator and linguist. She be helping us understand the aliens better. Yaram bowed politely. She was older than Nari, with kind eyes and a confident manner. I've been studying the alien language patterns, she said. There are some interesting things about how they communicate. Such as? Asked Nari. They have very few words for cooperation. Or partnership, Yaram explained. Most of their language is about hierarchy, dominance, and control. They literally might not have concepts for what you and Beiko represent. Minho set up a video camera and began recording. I want to document how you and Beiko interact, he said. The aliens need to see that this isn't a performance or a trick, it's a real relationship. For the next hour, Nari went through her normal routine with Beiko. She showed the scientists how they communicated, not through commands, but through gestures, sounds, and body language that they had developed together over the years. When she wanted him to follow her, she didn't order him. She simply looked at him and tilted her head toward where she wanted to go. He understood immediately and fell into step beside her. When they came to a stream, Nari knelt down to drink water. Beiko lay down next to her, not because she told him to, but because that's what they did together. They were a team. Remarkable, Dr. Kim murmured, taking notes. There's no dominance hierarchy here at all. You're equals. That's not quite right, Nari said. We each have our strengths. Beiko is stronger and has better senses. I can solve problems and plan ahead. We complement each other. To demonstrate, Nari pointed to a tree about 50 feet away. Hidden in its branches was a small platform where the reserve staff sometimes left food for the tigers. Today there was a piece of meat up there, but it was too high for either Nari or Beiko to reach alone. Nari looked at the tree, then at Beiko. She didn't say anything, but he understood what she was thinking. He walked to the base of the tree and crouched down. Nari climbed onto his back and he stood up slowly, carrying her higher. From his back, she could reach the platform and retrieve. the food, but instead of keeping it for herself, she tossed it down to Beko. He caught it easily and began eating, making happy chuffing sounds. "Did you train him to do that?" asked Minho. "No," Nari said. "We figured it out together the first time we saw food up there. Now it's just something we do." Sunho was watching with interest. The alien creature would never do something like that. It would either break the tree down or give up. It wouldn't think to cooperate with its handler. "Because it doesn't see its handler as a partner," Yerim observed. In their language, the relationship between the Vorthok and their creatures is described as master and weapon. There's no word for partnership. Dr. Kim finished her notes and looked up. "I think I understand what you're trying to show them. The question is, will they understand it?" "They'll understand," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Yunwoo approaching through the trees. He had been watching from a distance. "How can you be sure?" asked Dr. Kim. "Because predators recognize other predators," Yunwoo said. "And the Vorthek think of themselves as the ultimate predators. When they see Neri and Beko working together, they'll realize they're looking at something they've never encountered before, a predator team that's more than the sum of its parts." As the day went on, the team of scientists documented everything about Nari and Beko's relationship. They measured his strength, speed, and agility. They tested his intelligence with puzzles and problems. But most importantly, they observed how he and Nari worked together. In the afternoon, they set up a series of challenges similar to what the alien creature had faced. There were barriers to get through, objects to move, and problems to solve. The alien Shadow Maw had destroyed everything in its path. Beko approached each challenge differently. When faced with a concrete wall, he didn't try to break through it. Instead, he found a way around it. When he needed to move a heavy object, he used leverage and patience rather than brute force. And through it all, Nari was with him. Not commanding him, but thinking with him. When he was puzzled by a problem, she would offer suggestions. When she couldn't reach something, he would help her. They were truly partners. Dodison began to set. Dr. Kim gathered her team together. "I believe this could work," she said. "But there's still one big risk. How will Beko react to the alien creature? Tigers are territorial, and the Shadow Maw might trigger his protective instincts." Nari looked at Beko, who was resting nearby in the grass. "He'll be fine," she said. "He's never met an animal he couldn't handle. And more importantly, he trusts me. If I'm not afraid, he won't be afraid." "Are you afraid?" asked Yaren gently. Nari was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm terrified, but not of their creature. I'm afraid of failing, of letting down everyone on Earth." Yunwoo put a hand on her shoulder. "You won't fail. You and Beko represent something unique in the galaxy. The aliens have conquered many worlds, but I don't think they've ever met anything like you two." As night fell, Nari and Beko returned to their favorite spot by the lake. Tomorrow would be their last day of preparation. The day after that, they would face the aliens and show them what Earth's true strength looked like. Beko rested his massive head on her lap, and Nari stroked his fur gently. Whatever happened, they would face it together. Just like they had faced everything else for the past 6 years. Ready for an ad? News of Earth's unusual response spread across the galaxy faster than light. On distant worlds, beings gathered around communication devices to hear about the small planet that planned to answer the mighty Vorthek Empire with a girl and her pet. On Melody Prime, a peaceful world of blue oceans and floating cities, a young anthropologist named Inha listened to the reports with growing fascination. The Melodians were a gentle species that had submitted to the Vorthek years ago rather than face destruction. They served the Empire now, but they remembered what freedom had been like. "A human and a tiger," Inha whispered to her colleague Joran. "Working together as equals. I've never heard of such a thing." Joran looked skeptical. "It must be propaganda. No predator species would willingly cooperate with another. It goes against all natural law," but Inha wasn't convinced. She had studied human broadcasts for years, fascinated by their strange culture. Humans seemed to break all the normal rules about how species behaved. They kept pets, formed bonds with animals, and even mourned when their animal companions died. What if it's real? She asked. What if humans have found a way to truly partner with other predators? Then the Vorthek will destroy them quickly, Joran replied sadly. The Empire does not tolerate anything that challenges their view of how the universe should work. Meanwhile, on the Vorthek command ship orbiting Earth, Admiral Vekmar was receiving reports from across the Empire. Every conquered species was watching the events on Earth with interest. Some were betting on how quickly the humans would surrender. Others were quietly hoping for something different. The humans have chosen their champion, reported Commander Veltar, a single female and a large feline predator. Admiral Vekmar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. One female? Even the weakest species we've conquered sent armies or showed us their most powerful weapons. These humans are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both, sir, Veltar agreed. Ambassador Krelthin believes it will be an easy demonstration. He's confident his Shadow Maw will terrify the human into submission within minutes. On Earth, the preparation was frantic. Xiaojun, the media coordinator, was managing the biggest broadcast in human history. Every television station, radio network, and internet service on the planet would carry the demonstration live. More than that, the signal would be transmitted into space for the alien observers. The pressure is incredible, Xiaojun told his assistant. As they checked camera positions around the demonstration area, 7 billion people will be watching. Plus, however many aliens are out there. The demonstration area had been built in the empty field next to the alien ship. It was a large circular space surrounded by seats for observers. In the center was a variety of obstacles and challenges that both creatures would face. Taiwan, the event coordinator, was checking everything for the 100th time. The concrete barriers are in place, he reported to Jiho. We have the puzzle boxes, the agility course, and the strength tests all ready. What about safety? Asked General Park. If this goes wrong, we have tranquilizer guns positioned around the area, Taiwan assured him. But honestly, sir, if either of these creatures decides to attack, I don't think our weapons will help much. As the final day of preparation arrived, Nari found herself unable to sleep. She sat in her small cabin at the reserve, looking out the window at Baiko sleeping peacefully in the grass. He was so calm, so confident. She envied his ability to live in the moment without worrying about the future. There was a soft knock on her door. She opened it to find Hyunwoo standing outside with 2 cups of tea. Thought you might be awake, he said, offering her a cup. They sat together on her small porch, drinking tea and watching the stars. In the distance, they could see the lights of the alien ship. Are you having second thoughts? Hyunwoo asked gently. Nari shook her head. No, this is what we're meant to do. I can feel it. But I keep thinking about all the people counting on us. What if we're not enough? You are enough, Hyunwoo said firmly. I've worked with special forces teams, elite military units, the best trained soldiers in the world. I've never seen partnership like what you and Baiko have. You complement each other perfectly. But the alien creature is so powerful, Power isn't everything, Hyunwoo interrupted. I've seen the Shadow Maw's demonstration a dozen times now. It's strong, yes. It's frightening, but it's also predictable. It solves every problem the same way. With force, you and Baiko think, you adapt. You work together. That's something no amount of bioengineering can create. Nari took a sip of her tea and watched Baiko stretch in his sleep. Tell me about the alien psychology. What do they really want? Respect, Hyunwoo said without hesitation. The Vorthak conquered most of the galaxy because they believe strength is the only thing that matters. Every species they've met has either fought them with weapons or surrendered immediately. Either way, it confirms their worldview. And we're going to challenge that worldview? Exactly. We're going to show them a kind of strength they've never seen before. The strength that comes from trust, cooperation, and understanding between different species. As they talked, neither of them noticed the small figure watching from the shadows near the tree line. Inha, the Melodian anthropologist, had convinced her supervisors to let her visit Earth to observe the demonstration firsthand. She had arrived secretly that evening and was now studying the human and her tiger companion. What she saw amazed her. Even in the darkness, she could observe the bond between them. The human called Nari would occasionally look toward the sleeping tiger, and somehow he seemed to sense her attention. His ear would flick or his tail would twitch, as if acknowledging her presence even in sleep. This was unlike anything in Inha's studies of predator species. Most predators were solitary or lived in strict hierarchies. But this human and tiger seemed to exist in perfect balance with each other. Morning came too quickly. Nari woke to find Beiko sitting beside her bed, looking at her with his intelligent amber eyes. It was something he did when he sensed she was worried or upset. His presence always made her feel better. "Today's the day, beautiful," she said, sitting up and stroking his massive head. "Are you ready to meet some aliens?" Beiko chuffed softly and rubbed against her hand. Ready for anything, as always. As they made their way to the demonstration area, they found crowds of people lining the roads. Reporters, government officials, and ordinary citizens who had come to see history being made. Some held signs of support. Others looked worried or scared. "Look at them all," Nari murmured to Yanwu, who was walking beside them. "They believe in you," he replied. "All of Earth believes in you." At the demonstration area, they found the alien delegation already waiting. Ambassador Krelfin stood beside his shadow maw, both of them looking confident and somewhat amused. The creature was even more terrifying in daylight. Its bio-armor gleamed like black metal, and its red eyes seemed to glow with their own light around. The area, representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered to watch. Inha took her place among the Melodian delegation, her heart racing with excitement and fear. Dr. Kim approached Nari with a small device. "This is a translator," she explained. "It will let you communicate directly with the aliens if needed." Jiho walked over for one final briefing. "Remember, this isn't a fight. It's a demonstration. Show them what makes humans and Earth special." "No pressure," Nari said with a weak smile. Seiyojin gave the signal that the broadcast was beginning. Around the world, billions of people stopped what they were doing to watch. In space, alien fleets received the signal and prepared to witness what they expected would be a quick surrender. Ambassador Krelfin stepped forward and spoke into his translation device. "Humans of Earth, you have asked for 3 days to prepare. Your response: the time has come. Show us what you believe represents your species' strength." The massive crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. Nari took a deep breath and looked down at Beiko. He was calm, alert, and ready. His amber eyes met hers, and in that moment she felt their connection more strongly than ever. They were partners. They were family. They were ready. "Come on, boy," she whispered. "Let's show them what Earth is really about." Together, they walked into the center of the arena. The girl and her tiger, representing all of humanity against the vast alien empire. The fate of an entire world rested on their shoulders, but they walked forward without fear. Behind them, 7 billion humans held their breath. Above them, countless alien observers prepared to witness something they had never seen before. The demonstration was about to begin. The arena was silent except for the sound of breathing from thousands of observers. Humans sat in temporary bleachers on one side, while alien delegations occupied floating platforms on the other. Above them all, massive screens would broadcast every moment to billions of viewers across Earth and the galaxy. Nari walked to the center of the arena with Beiko padding silently beside her. The tiger moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator, each step perfectly controlled and silent. His massive paws made no sound on the ground, and his amber eyes took in everything around them with calm intelligence. Across from them, Ambassador Krelfin stood next to his shadow maw. The alien creature was a study in engineered terror. Its bio-armor plates shifted and clicked as it moved, creating an ominous metallic sound. Spikes ran along its spine, glowing with a faint purple light. Its red eyes swept the crowd, and wherever they looked, people unconsciously moved back. "Behold the power of the Vorthic Empire," Krelthin announced, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. "This is Razorclaw, bred from the genetic material of a dozen conquered worlds. It has been enhanced with bio-armor, psychic implants, and strength beyond any natural creature." The Shadow Maw reared up on its hind legs, displaying its full 12-foot height, its claws extended, each one longer than a sword blade. The creature let out a roar that was unlike anything from Earth, a sound that seemed to come from some prehistoric nightmare. The roar contained subsonic frequencies that made people feel sick and afraid. In the alien observation areas, various species nodded in recognition. They had all seen similar demonstrations before their own worlds had submitted to the Vorthak Empire. "And what does Earth offer in response?" Krelthin asked, looking at Nari and Baiko with obvious amusement. "A child and her pet?" Nari stepped forward. She looked very small next to the massive alien and his creature, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "This is Baiko," she said simply. "He is my friend and partner. Together we represent something that your empire has never encountered before." Baiko didn't roar or display aggression. Instead, he sat calmly beside Nari and looked directly at the Shadow Maw. His gaze was steady and unafraid. In the alien observation areas, several beings leaned forward with interest. They had expected the Earth creature to show fear or submission. Taiwan, the event coordinator, stepped forward with a tablet containing the demonstration schedule. "The first test will be a display of strength," he announced. "Each creature will attempt to break through a series of barriers." 3 concrete walls had been erected in the arena, each one thicker than the last. The first was 3 feet thick, the second was 5 feet, and the third was 8 feet of reinforced concrete and steel. Krelthin gestured to his Shadow Maw. "Razorclaw, demonstrate." The creature charged at the first wall with terrifying speed. Its bio-armor plates shifted to concentrate protective material around its head and shoulders. It hit the concrete barrier like a living missile, smashing through it in an explosion of dust and debris. Chunks of concrete flew in all directions, and the crowd gasped. Without pausing, the Shadow Maw continued to the second barrier. This one took 2 hits to break through, but the creature's enhanced strength was more than enough. The thick concrete cracked and crumbled under the assault. The third barrier proved more challenging. The Shadow Maw attacked it repeatedly, its claws scoring deep gouges in the reinforced surface. After several minutes of sustained assault, the wall finally collapsed. The creature stood among the rubble, its armor plates glowing with heat from the effort. The alien observers made approving sounds. Several species had never managed to break through the third barrier during their own demonstrations. "Impressive," Jiho said from the human observation area. "But now let's see a different approach." All eyes turned to Nari and Baiko. The tiger looked at the 3 barriers, or rather the first one, since the other 2 had been destroyed. Nari knelt beside him, and they seemed to have a silent conversation. Looking at the wall and then at each other, instead of charging at the barrier, Baiko began to investigate it. He walked around its edges, sniffing at the base and examining the construction. His sensitive nose detected something the visual observers had missed, a small gap between the concrete sections. Where they had been joined together, Nari saw what he had found and nodded. Together they approached the gap. It was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, but Baiko was incredibly flexible for such a large animal. With Nari guiding him, he worked his way through the opening, compressing his powerful body into an impossibly small space. Within minutes, both of them were on the other side of the barrier. They had passed through without breaking anything or making any noise. The human crowd erupted in cheers, but the alien observers were puzzled. In their cultures, strength meant destruction. They didn't understand why avoiding destruction could be considered superior. "The human creature has found a weakness in the barrier," observed one alien diplomat. "But it did not demonstrate superior power?" Ingha, watching from the Melodian section, understood better. "They didn't just find a weakness," she whispered to her companion. "They worked together to exploit it." The tiger's senses found the gap. The human's intelligence recognized its potential. and together they solved the problem without wasting energy. The second test was agility. A complex obstacle course had been set up with jumps, narrow beams, and moving platforms. The Shadow Maw approached it like a demolition machine, smashing through obstacles that were meant to be navigated around or over. When it came to a narrow beam suspended 20 feet above the ground, the creature simply jumped up and grabbed the support structure, pulling the entire apparatus down to ground level where it could walk across the wreckage. For a series of moving platforms, it timed one jump and then used its claws to anchor itself to the nearest platform, stopping its movement through brute force. The Shadow Maw completed the course, but left it completely destroyed in the process. Beko's approach was entirely different. He flowed through the course like water, his powerful muscles propelling him over obstacles with graceful leaps. When he came to the narrow beam, he walked across it as easily as if it were solid ground, his perfect balance making the 20-foot height irrelevant. The moving platforms presented an interesting puzzle. Instead of trying to stop them or force his way across, Beko studied their pattern. He waited patiently until he understood their timing, then made a series of quick jumps from platform to platform, using their movement to help propel him forward. Nari followed a few seconds behind, using some of the same techniques but also finding her own path through the course. When she reached a jump that was too far for her human body, Beko was already waiting to help boost her across. They completed the course in half the time the Shadow Maw had taken, and left it completely intact. Dr. Kim was furiously taking notes. Two completely different approaches to the same challenges, she murmured. Force versus finesse, destruction versus preservation. The third test was the most important one, problem solving. A large puzzle box had been placed in the center of the arena. It was a complex mechanical device with moving parts, hidden switches, and multiple locks. Inside was a piece of food that both creatures could smell but not reach. The Shadow Maw immediately began attacking the box, trying to tear it apart with its claws. The device was built to withstand such attacks, made from the same materials as starship hulls. After several minutes of futile clawing and biting, the creature began using its psychic abilities, trying to overwhelm the mechanical systems with mental force. Nothing worked. The box remained sealed. Finally, Krelthin called his creature back. The device is defective, he declared. No proper challenge would be impossible to solve through strength. Maybe the challenge isn't meant to be solved through strength, Nari suggested. She and Beko approached the puzzle box together. The tiger sniffed around its base while Nari examined the visible mechanisms. The device had several panels with symbols on them, some moving parts that could be rotated, and what appeared to be a series of pressure plates. Nari traced the symbols with her finger, while Beko used his sensitive hearing to detect the sounds the mechanism made when different parts moved. Together, they began to understand the pattern. It wasn't a puzzle that required force or psychic power. It was a logic problem that required patience, observation, and teamwork. Some of the switches were too high for Nari to reach easily, but perfect for Beko when he stood on his hind legs. Others required the fine motor control that only human hands possessed. Working together, they methodically activated switches in the correct sequence, rotated panels to match symbols, and triggered pressure plates in the right combination. After 20 minutes of careful work, the box opened with a soft click. Inside was not just food, but a message in multiple languages. Congratulations. You have demonstrated that some problems can only be solved through cooperation and understanding. The arena fell completely silent. Even the Shadow Maw had stopped its restless pacing to watch. In all their conquests across the galaxy, the Vorthak had never encountered anything like this. Ambassador Krelthin stared at the open puzzle box, his purple skin darkening with what might have been confusion or anger. This is not a demonstration. The atmosphere in the arena had changed completely. What had started as a demonstration of dominance was becoming something else entirely. A conversation between two very different philosophies about what strength truly meant. Ambassador Krelthin stood silent for several minutes, staring at the open puzzle box. His shadow maw, sensing his master's confusion, began to pace restlessly around the arena. The creature's bio-armor plates were shifting more rapidly now, creating a metallic, clicking sound that echoed in the silence. Finally, the alien ambassador spoke. "You have shown cleverness," he admitted. "But cleverness is not strength. In the real galaxy, cooperation makes species weak. It makes them dependent on others. True power comes from being able to stand alone. Does it?" Nari asked quietly. She looked at Baiko, who was sitting calmly beside her, then back at the alien. "Your shadow maw is powerful, but it can only do what you tell it to do. It can't think for itself or adapt to new situations. Is that really strength?" "It obeys?" "Perfectly," Krelthin replied proudly. "It is an extension of my will, but what if your will is wrong?" Nari asked. "What if the situation requires something you haven't thought of?" To demonstrate her point, she gestured to Taiwan, who activated the final test. New obstacles rose from the arena floor, not barriers to break or puzzles to solve, but a complex maze with multiple paths and hidden dangers. "Navigate the maze," Taiwan announced. "But be warned, some paths lead to dead ends, others contain traps. Choose wisely." Krelthin immediately commanded his shadow maw to enter the maze. The creature charged forward, taking the most direct path toward the center. Almost immediately, it triggered a trap. Metal barriers slammed down, blocking its path. The shadow maw tried to break through them, but they were made of the same material as spaceship hulls. Frustrated, the creature backtracked and tried another path. Again, it triggered a trap. This time, the floor beneath it gave way, dropping the shadow maw into a pit. The creature's powerful legs allowed it to leap out easily, but it was clearly becoming agitated. "This is a waste of time," Krelthin declared. "Razorclaw, destroy the maze." The shadow maw began attacking the maze walls with its claws and bio-enhanced strength. It could damage them, but the maze was designed to be rebuilt automatically. As fast as the creature destroyed sections, new walls rose to replace them. Meanwhile, Nari and Baiko had entered the maze from a different entrance. But instead of rushing forward, they moved slowly and carefully. Baiko used his acute senses to detect dangers ahead, while Nari studied the pattern of the walls and passages. When they encountered their first potential trap, Nari noticed that the floor stones were slightly different colors. She tested one carefully with her foot. Nothing happened. She tested another and heard a faint mechanical sound that suggested a trap mechanism. "This one's dangerous," she told Baiko softly. The tiger understood and stepped carefully around the suspicious stones. They worked their way deeper into the maze, with Baiko's hearing and smell providing early warning of traps, while Nari's human problem-solving skills helped them choose the correct paths. When they reached a section where the passage split into 3 directions, they paused to consider their options. The left path sloped downward and smelled of damp air. The middle path was wide and well lit. The right path was narrow and seemed to curve back on itself. "The middle path looks too easy," Nari murmured. "If I were designing this maze, I'd make the obvious choice the wrong one." Baiko sniffed each passage carefully, then looked at her and tilted his head toward the right path. His tiger instincts were telling him something about that direction. "You think right?" she asked. He chuffed softly in agreement. They took the narrow, winding path. It was difficult to navigate, with tight turns and low overhangs that forced them to move slowly. But eventually they emerged into the center of the maze, where a small platform waited with a flag marking victory. Behind them, they could still hear the shadow maw destroying walls in frustration. In the observation areas, the alien delegates were having intense discussions. Inha, the Melodian anthropologist, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you see what they're doing?" she whispered urgently to her companion. "They're not just solving the challenges, they're demonstrating a completely different way of thinking about problems." "It's still just cleverness," her companion replied, but he sounded less certain than before. "No, it's more than that," Inha insisted. "Look at how they communicate. The human doesn't give orders to the tiger." She asked for his opinion. She trusts his instincts even when they disagree with her logic. "That's not dominance. That's partnership. In the Vorthek command ship orbiting Earth, Admiral Thekmar was watching the demonstration with growing unease. His entire worldview was built on the idea that strength meant the ability to dominate others. But what he was seeing in the arena challenged that belief. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving messages from across the Empire. Other species are watching this demonstration and asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "About cooperation. About whether there might be alternatives to the dominance hierarchy we've established." Admiral Thekmar's skin darkened with anger. This was exactly what he had feared. The humans weren't just refusing to submit, they were spreading dangerous ideas. Back in the arena, Nari and Beko had completed the maze and were waiting in the center while the Shadow Maw continued its destructive rampage. Ambassador Krelthan finally called his creature back, his frustration obvious. "These tests prove nothing," he declared. "In real combat, cleverness means nothing against superior power." "Then let's test that," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see General Park stepping forward. "With Ambassador Krelthan's permission, I'd like to propose a final demonstration. A true test of strength versus cooperation." Krelthan's eyes glowed with interest. "What kind of test? A hunt?" General Park replied. "Both teams will track and capture the same target. No killing, just capture. The first team to succeed wins." "And what is the target?" General Park gestured to Taiwan, who released a small drone into the arena. The device was fast, agile, and equipped with advanced evasion systems. It immediately began flying in complex patterns, using the maze walls and obstacles as cover. "Capture the drone," General Park announced. "Use any non-lethal methods you choose." Krelthan smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Finally, a real challenge, Razor Claw. The Shadow Maw immediately began chasing the drone, leaping and clawing at it as it flew overhead. The creature was fast and powerful, but the drone was faster and more maneuverable. Every time the Shadow Maw thought it had cornered the device, it would dart away through a gap too small for the massive creature to follow. Krelthan tried using his psychic connection to direct his creature more precisely. But the drone's erratic movement patterns made it impossible to predict where it would go next. Meanwhile, Nari and Beko took a completely different approach. Instead of chasing the drone directly, they positioned themselves at opposite ends of the arena and began to observe its flight patterns. "It's programmed to avoid capture," Nari said quietly, "but it still has to follow certain rules. It can't fly too high because of the arena ceiling, and it has to avoid obstacles." But Beko was studying the drone's behavior with the patience of a natural hunter. Tigers were ambush predators. They didn't chase their prey until they were exhausted. They waited for the perfect moment to strike. After several minutes of observation, Nari and Beko had identified the drone's patterns. It had 3 main flight paths that it rotated between, and each path had a bottleneck where it had to slow down to navigate around obstacles. "There," Nari pointed to a gap between 2 maze walls. "It has to fly through that space every time it uses the eastern path." Beko nodded and moved silently into position. Nari went to the opposite side of the gap. When the drone came through on its next pass, they would be ready. The Shadow Maw was still chasing the drone frantically, growing more frustrated with each failed attempt. Its bio-armor was beginning to overheat from the exertion, and its movements were becoming less coordinated. The drone, following its programmed patterns, turned toward the eastern path. It flew directly toward the gap where Nari and Beko were waiting. At the perfect moment, Beko leaped. His timing was flawless, his powerful legs launching him into the air just as the drone passed through the gap. But instead of trying to grab the device himself, he knocked it directly toward Nari, who was ready with a net. The drone, caught completely off guard by this coordinated attack, flew directly into the net. Nari pulled it closed and the hunt was over. The arena fell silent once again. The Shadow Maw stopped its frantic chasing and looked around in confusion. Ambassador Krelthan stared at the captured drone in Nari's hands. "How?" he asked. "Patience," Nari replied. "Observation and trust." Beko could have tried to catch the drone himself, but he knew I was in a better position. I trusted him to make the perfect jump, and he trusted me to be ready to catch it. She held up the captured drone. This is what partnership looks like. Not one mind controlling another, but two minds working together toward a common goal. In the alien observation areas, conversations were breaking out everywhere. Species that had been conquered by the Vorthik were seeing proof that there were alternatives to. The silence in the arena stretched for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. Ambassador Krelfin stood perfectly still, his bio-armor suit's lights pulsing in patterns that none of the humans could interpret. His Shadowmaw had stopped its restless pacing and was looking between its master and the strange, human-tiger pair with something that might have been confusion. Yorim, Earth's translator, was frantically working at her console, trying to understand the subtle changes in the ambassador's body language and the meaning behind the shifting colors of his skin. She had studied Vorthik communication patterns for weeks, but this was unlike anything in her research. His skin patterns, she whispered to Dr. Kim, they're not showing aggression or dominance anymore. I think he's processing something he's never encountered before. In the alien observation areas, the effect was more dramatic. Species that had remained silent throughout their own subjugation to the Vorthik Empire were now talking in excited whispers. The Melodian delegation was having what appeared to be a heated discussion, with Inha gesturing passionately at her fellow anthropologists. "Don't you understand?" she was saying. "This changes everything we thought we knew about predator relationships. The Vorthak have always claimed that dominance is the natural order, but these humans have proven that cooperation between apex predators is not only possible, it's more effective." An older Melodian named Korvik shook his head. "Even if that's true, it doesn't matter. The Empire will not allow such ideas to spread. They'll destroy Earth rather than risk their system of control being challenged." "But what if other species see this?" Inha asked. "What if they realize there are alternatives to submission?" Their conversation was not unique. Across the observation areas, similar discussions were taking place in dozens of languages. The Zephyrians, who had been enslaved for 50 years, were quietly discussing what they had witnessed. The Christic, a silicon-based species that communicated through light patterns, were flashing complex messages to each other at frequencies too fast for translators to follow. In the Vorthik command ship, Admiral Vekmar was receiving increasingly urgent reports from across the Empire. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're detecting unusual communication patterns from multiple conquered systems. Species that haven't spoken to each other in decades are suddenly exchanging messages. What are they saying?" "The translators are having difficulty, but the key words appear to be cooperation, partnership, and Earth." Admiral Vekmar's bio-armor began glowing brighter, a sign of extreme agitation. "Order all communication channels to be monitored. Any species caught spreading seditious ideas will face immediate punishment." "Yes, sir, but Admiral... The messages are using encryption methods we don't recognize." "They appear to be sharing technical knowledge as well as philosophical ideas." Down in the arena, Ambassador Krelfin finally moved. He walked slowly toward Nari and Baiko, his massive form casting a shadow over them. But instead of the threatening approach he had used earlier, his movements were careful, almost respectful. "I have traveled to 47 worlds," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. "I have seen the fall of empires, the surrender of entire species, the subjugation of beings who thought themselves mighty. In every case, the outcome was determined by which side possessed greater strength." He stopped about 10 feet away from them, close enough to speak directly, but far enough to show he wasn't threatening them. "But what I have witnessed today... This is not about strength as we understand it. You and your companion do not dominate each other. Neither of you is the master, neither is the servant. How is this possible?" Nari looked up at the towering alien, her hand resting gently on Baiko's massive head. The tiger was alert but calm, his amber eyes watching the ambassador with intelligent curiosity rather than fear or aggression. Because we choose to trust each other, she said simply. Every day Biko could leave. He's faster than any human, stronger than any weapon we could use to stop him. He stays because he wants to stay, because we're family. Family? Krelfin-S translation device struggled with the concept. In Vorthic culture, relationships were defined by hierarchy and utility. The idea of choosing to remain with someone simply because of emotional attachment was almost incomprehensible. We care about each other's well-being, Nari explained. When Biko is happy, I'm happy. When I'm in danger, he protects me, not because he has to, but because he wants to. To demonstrate, she took a few steps away from Biko and sat down on the ground. Immediately, the tiger moved to her side and lay down next to her, his massive body curled protectively around her smaller form. It was such a natural gesture that most humans in the audience took it for granted, but to the alien observers, it was extraordinary. A predator that chose to make itself vulnerable for the sake of another being's comfort? The concept challenged fundamental assumptions about survival and self-interest. Jinwoo, Earth's cultural attach, saw an opportunity to explain further. He approached the group carefully, carrying a tablet with images and videos. Ambassador, he said respectfully, if I may show you something that might help explain what you're seeing. Krelfin nodded, and Jinwoo activated his tablet. Images appeared showing various human-animal partnerships throughout history. Dogs working with police officers, horses carrying soldiers into battle, dolphins helping fishermen, birds delivering messages across great distances. For thousands of years, Jinwoo explained, humans have formed partnerships with other species, not through force or genetic manipulation, but through mutual benefit and trust. We call it domestication, but it's really cooperation. The images showed rescue dogs finding people trapped in earthquakes, guide dogs helping blind humans navigate the world, therapy animals providing comfort to sick children. These animals could abandon their human partners at any time, Jinwoo continued. But they choose to stay and help because the relationship benefits both species. Humans provide food, shelter, and medical care. Animals provide abilities that humans lack, better senses, greater strength, different kinds of intelligence. Ambassador Krelfin studied the images intently. But this makes your species dependent on others. Dependency is weakness. Is it? Nari asked, standing up and brushing dirt from her clothes. Biko rose with her, moving with fluid grace. Biko. Contract prey I would never notice. I can solve problems that would confuse him. Together we can do things neither of us could accomplish alone. How is that weakness? Because if one partner fails, both fail, Krelfin replied, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. And if one partner succeeds, both succeed, Nari countered. We share risks, but we also share rewards, and more than that ... She paused, looking for the right words. We share joy. When Biko accomplishes something difficult, I feel proud of him. When I solve a problem, he seems pleased for me. There's happiness in our partnership that goes beyond mere survival. Happiness. Another concept that the Vorthic language struggled to translate. Their society was built on achievement, conquest, and dominance. The idea of deriving pleasure from another being's success was alien to them, but as Krelfin watched Nari and Biko interact, he began to see what she meant. When she praised the tiger for his performance in the demonstrations, his entire body language changed. His tail flicked with what could only be called contentment. His eyes half closed in pleasure at her approval, and when Biko nuzzled against her hand, Nari's face lit up with genuine joy. It wasn't the satisfaction of a master pleased with a servant's obedience. It was the happiness of one family member celebrating another's success. I begin to understand, Krelfin said slowly, but how can such a system work on a larger scale? How do you maintain order without hierarchy? How do you make decisions without a clear leader? Yunwoo stepped forward. May I answer that, Ambassador? At Krelfin-S nod, Yunwoo gestured to the crowd of humans in the arena. Look around you. This demonstration was organized by dozens of different people with different skills. Diplomats, scientists, military personnel, technicians, translators. No single person was in complete control, but someone must lead, Krelfin insisted. Leadership can be shared, Hyunwoo explained. In this situation, Jiho provided diplomatic guidance. Dr. Kim offered scientific expertise, General Park handled security, and Nari and Biko demonstrated our capabilities. Each person led in their area of strength, and when there were disagreements, we discussed them and found solutions everyone could accept, Jiho said, joining the conversation. It's not always efficient, and it's not always fast, but it— 3 months had passed since the demonstration in the arena. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before Earth showed the universe a different way to think about strength and cooperation. Nari stood in what had once been a simple Tiger Reserve in Korea, but was now something much more significant. The facility had been expanded into Earth's first interspecies cooperation center, where beings from across the galaxy came to learn about partnership rather than dominance. Today's visitors were a delegation from the Christic Confederation, a group of silicon-based beings whose homeworld had been conquered by the Vorthic 50 years ago. They communicated through patterns of light that flickered across their crystalline bodies, creating rainbow displays that were beautiful to watch. They want to understand how Bako learned to trust you. Yaram translated as the lead Christic flashed a complex series of questions. In their culture, predator species never cooperate with other life forms. Nari smiled and looked at Bako, who was resting in his favorite spot by the lake. Even after becoming famous across the galaxy, he remained the same calm, intelligent tiger he had always been. Tell them it wasn't about learning to trust, she said. It was about choosing to build trust together, day by day over many years. The Christic delegation spent the morning observing Nari and Baiko's daily routine. They watched as the pair worked together to solve problems, how they communicated without words, and how they shared everything from food to comfortable sleeping spots. But more importantly, they met the other human-animal teams that had begun training at the center. Minho worked with a pack of wolves that had learned to coordinate complex search and rescue operations. Sunho had formed an unlikely partnership with a group of ravens that could gather intelligence across vast distances. Each partnership was different, but they all shared the same fundamental principle: mutual respect and voluntary cooperation between species that evolution had never intended to work together. The real change, however, was happening in space. Admiral Thekmar had been recalled to the Vorthak homeworld 3 weeks after the demonstration. His replacement, Admiral Zenka, had arrived with very different orders. Instead of conquest and subjugation, the new admiral's mission was to establish diplomatic relations with Earth and other worlds that had begun embracing cooperative principles. The Empire is adapting, Admiral Zenka explained to Jiho during their first formal meeting aboard the alien flagship. What your species demonstrated has caused significant discussion among our leadership. Jiho, now serving as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community, nodded carefully. Change is never easy, especially when it challenges fundamental beliefs. Indeed, there has been resistance from some sectors. Admiral Thekmar and his supporters argue that cooperation makes the Empire weak, that other hostile species will take advantage of any show of softness. And what do you think, Admiral? Zenka was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through the ship's viewing port. I think that an empire built on fear cannot last forever. Eventually the conquered rise up, or external threats emerge that require unity rather than subjugation to face. She turned back to Jiho. We have received reports of movement in the void sector. Species that exist beyond our current borders, technologies we do not understand. If these reports are accurate, the galaxy may soon face challenges that require all of us to work together. This was news to Jiho, but it explained some of the urgency behind the Empire's sudden change in policy. Earth would be willing to share our knowledge of cooperation and partnership, he offered. Not as subjects or servants, but as allies. That is what we hoped you would say. The changes weren't limited to the Vorthic Empire. Across the galaxy, species that had been isolated or oppressed for decades were beginning to communicate with each other again. The Melodian Confederation had become a hub for interspecies research. with INHA leading studies on cooperation and partnership that were being shared throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians had begun working with the Crystalline Collective to develop new technologies that combined biological and silicon-based engineering. The aquatic republics were sharing water purification techniques with desert worlds that had been struggling with resource scarcity for centuries. Most remarkably, the Shadow Maw creatures that had once been symbols of Vorthek dominance were being reformed. Not through force or reprogramming, but through exposure to different ways of thinking. Razorclaw, the Shadow Maw that had participated in the original demonstration, had become something of a celebrity. Instead of being a weapon of conquest, he now served as an ambassador between the Vorthek and other species. His ability to learn and adapt had proven that even the most engineered weapons of war could choose a different path. Back on Earth, Nari found herself in a role she had never expected. Kyungmin, now Earth's Director of Interspecies Relations, had asked her to head a new program that would train diplomatic teams from across the galaxy. "The demand is incredible," Kyungmin explained as they walked through the expanded facilities. 17 different species have requested training programs. They want to learn how to build the kind of partnerships you and Beiko represent. "It's not something you can teach in a classroom," Nari replied, watching a group of young Melodians observe a training session between human marine biologists and a pod of dolphins. "It has to be experienced, lived, built over time through mutual trust and respect, which is exactly why they need to come here and see it in action." The training programs had been running for 2 months now, and the results were remarkable. Species that had never worked together were forming partnerships that solved problems none of them could have handled alone. A team of Vorthek engineers and human architects had designed new space habitats that could adapt to the needs of multiple species. Melodian anthropologists and Christic mathematicians had developed translation systems that could handle not just language, but fundamental differences in how various species thought about concepts like time, space, and identity. But perhaps most importantly, these partnerships were creating something new, a generation of beings from across the galaxy who thought of cooperation as natural rather than strange. One afternoon, as Nari was working with a particularly challenging group, a Vorthek warrior, trying to learn patience from a human child and her pet rabbit, she received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Krelthan stood at the entrance to the training area. But he looked very different from the imposing figure who had first arrived on Earth 6 months ago. His bio-armor was simpler, less threatening. His posture was relaxed rather than aggressive. "Ambassador," Nari said, genuinely pleased to see him. "What brings you back to Earth?" "I wanted to see how the programs were developing," he replied. "And, I wanted to speak with you about something personal." They walked together to the lake where Beiko was resting. The tiger looked up as they approached, recognizing the alien who had become something of a friend over the past months. "I have been thinking about our conversation after the demonstration," Krelthan said. "About choice and partnership and what it means to trust another being. And I want to try something different with Razorclaw. Instead of being his master, I want to become his partner, but I don't know how to begin." Nari smiled. "The same way every partnership begins. By offering respect instead of demanding obedience. By asking instead of commanding. By being willing to be vulnerable with someone you care about." Over the following weeks, Krelthan worked with Nari and her team to rebuild his relationship with Razorclaw. It was difficult at first. Both the ambassador and his Shadow Maw had been conditioned to think in terms of hierarchy and control, but gradually, something beautiful emerged. Razorclaw began making choices for himself, expressing preferences, even showing what could only be described as affection for his former master. And Krelthan discovered that a partner who chose to work with him was far more effective than a weapon that simply obeyed orders. The transformation became a powerful symbol throughout the galaxy. If a Vorthek ambassador and his bioengineered war beast could become true partners, then cooperation between any species was possible. 6 months after the demonstration, Earth received an invitation that changed everything. The Galactic Federation, a loose alliance of species that had existed on the fringes of Vorthic space, formally requested Earth's membership, not as a junior partner or protected world, but as an equal member with full voting rights. They want U.S. to help mediate disputes between member species, Jiho explained to the UN Security Council. Our expertise in cooperation and partnership has become something of a legend in certain sectors of the galaxy. And what about the Vorthic Empire? Asked General Park. They've also applied for modified membership, Jiho replied with a smile. Admiral Zenka says they want to transition from an empire based on conquest to a confederation based on mutual benefit. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but they're committed to trying. The vote was unanimous. Earth would join the galactic community not as conquerors or subjects, but as teachers and partners. A year later, Nari stood in the same spot where the demonstration had taken place, but the empty field had been transformed into a permanent diplomatic complex. Representatives from 43 different species,